The critic and literary blogger, Nigel Beale, recently put up a post about libraries, and he pointed out that a lot of libraries these days are buying bestsellers and foregrounding them, trying to get their patrons to take out these books. And he made the argument that this was not fair to either publishers or writers of best-selling fiction because it took away it ate into their income. In other words, Nigel was saying, why not wait a little bit? Now, criticisms of libraries are nothing new from Canadian critics and arts journalists and lit bloggers and so forth. The publisher and journalist Kenneth White recently wrote an article that was published, I think, in the Globe and Mail, which argued against libraries and for similar reasons, that they ate into publishers' profits. I am not going to I don't want to delve into that argument too deeply, except to make a couple of points. Nigel, Kenneth, and I are approximately of the same generation. And when I was a young bookish kid going to libraries and going to bookstores and buying books at book clubs, I was consuming a fair bit of sort of bestseller type stuff. And one type of novel that I read a lot of was war novels, and frequently about the British Air Force, the RAF, the British Navy, the American Navy, American soldiers, and so forth. That's how it was, being a sort of bookish bestseller war novel reading kid in the 1970s, Alistair MacLean and so forth, Herman Wouk. The situation has continued with the popularity of that genre, except what has happened these days is that the genre of books about World War II have been overtaken very much by the movie industry. I just saw, the reason I started thinking about all this is I saw a clip for a movie called Greyhound, which apparently is produced by Apple Studios. It was being promoted on YouTube, and it's a Tom Hanks vehicle about something like, it looks like a Corvette or a destroyer in the American Navy during World War II, battling U-boats. Very stirring stuff, very well done, and getting a lot of sort of positive attention from World War II movie buffs, Tom Hanks fans, etc. The publishing industry, the American and UK publishing industries, are still feeding into that interest in World War II. Interestingly, there are almost no novels produced by the Canadian publishing industry about World War II, so much so that most Canadians have pretty much, even educated Canadians, have pretty much zero knowledge of the generals and battles that Canadians fought during World War II, despite the fact that the Canadian Army and Navy and Air Force were very significant contributors to the war against Nazi Germany. Now, the point that I'd sort of like to circle back and make is that often one finds in Canadian cultural discourse these sort of general statements, these general criticisms of the publishing industry, of libraries and so forth. And what I would like to say to both Kenneth and Nigel is, I'm tired of it. I, for one, I'm just tired of the whole discourse. Nothing personal. You can keep, you're perfectly entitled to your points of view. I will always read what you have to say and think about it seriously. But really, let's be honest. There are problems specific to cultural production in Canada. There are problems, il y a des problèmes spécifiques aux bibliothèques et maisons d'édition canadiens, québécois. And it is high time that we started having more cultural discourse about the problems afflicting Canadian Quebecois publishers, Canadian Quebecois libraries. The reason that Canadian publishers are suffering is because they don't sell very many books to Canadians. And the argument that libraries are eating into their sales is one that really requires a bit of hard-nosed analysis and less sentimentality and less generalization about the publishing industry generally. So those are just sort of friendly suggestions that I'm making to both Kenneth and Nigel. And as well, I think it would strengthen their arguments about this whole issue. I think it would make their arguments more interesting, at least for me. It's certainly worth a try. They're both Canadians, they're both Canadian nationalists, and I hope they will take what I'm saying here as constructive criticism, not meant as trolling or anything like that. And finally, I'd like to make a point, a personal point, if I may. I wrote a novel about Canadian soldiers fighting during World War II at Juno Beach. There is still, up to this point, no novel, none, zero, about Canadian soldiers fighting at Juno Beach. It's surreal. It's unreal. There's no interest among Canadian publishers in reading this kind of material. There's a market for it, but there's no interest among publishers. Why? I don't know. But that's the dog that I have in this particular fight. And it is one reason why I think this discourse, this sort of universalizing discourse about libraries in general, about the publishing industry in general, really is not going to do Canadian culture much good.